Good morning, Dog Nation. I am Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. We're happy to have you with us. From folks watching far and wide, including as I look at our YouTube comment section here right now, Thomas Morgan checking in today from Alaska. Thomas, we're glad you're here. Way out west, very early in the morning there. He says he's curious about opinions on Ryan Puglisi, if he'd be thrown into a game. And I'll tell you just real quickly, Thomas, I do think that that's one of the things that Georgia wants to do in fall camp, early portion of the season, is kind of ready Puglisi so that if he is called upon because of an injury or something like that later on in the year, that he would be ready, that he would have confidence and Georgia could gain its confidence in him. But either way, we're glad to have you checking in today all the way from out in Alaska. That is really fun. Now, for us today, we're going to have hopefully a really fun time with you today, too. A lot of recruiting talk on the program, including a little bit off the top, a lot of rumors and reports out there as it relates to five-star tight end Mark Bowman. We'll tell you about that. We're going to give you a couple of lists today as it relates to Georgia. One of these I think you're going to really like, or at least like more so than not. Another one of these that we think deserves a necessary rebuke. We'll give you that. There was a really fun conversation that popped up around Georgia yesterday involving what the Dogs can do to kind of maximize their ability to kind of fundraise in this NIL era. Our Cody Chaffins and Kaylee Manziel going to help us out with that a little bit later on before we're done. And there's news all across the world of college football and in the SEC too, including changes, looks like, on their way for the college football playoffs. So we're going to cover all of that. We're really happy to have you with us for it. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Welcome, everybody, to Memorial Day weekend. We're certainly happy to have you with us for that. This is a little bit of a getaway day for us. Our tradition around here is there's a small handful of holidays that we take off. Obviously, during the season, that's Thanksgiving and Christmas. We try to be here the other days. And during the warm weather time of year, the summer, Memorial Day, 4th of July, normally if we're not here, we try to have at least some sort of pre-recorded show or something like that. But there are a few times of year that we want to just really be off. And in observance of Memorial Day on Monday, that's one of those things we think it's important to do. We also like the fun part of the holiday as well. So for a lot of folks, it's kind of the unofficial kickoff to summer. Pools are open. Folks are having cookouts. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And so as you're getting ready to do all that, we hope you enjoy it. Just keep in mind that we'll be doing that ourselves coming up on Monday. And then we'll see you back here live again on Tuesday, the way that we always do. We're happy you're here with us today. And I guess kind of rolling into a holiday weekend, perhaps this is the reason for it. It sort of seems like we're all over the place a little bit today. A lot of little stuff on the show. You might say we're going to kind of throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and sort of see what sticks. Hopefully it's more compelling than that. But it does sort of feel like our brains are kind of spread out in a bunch of different directions here with this holiday weekend. So let me set up the first of what's going to be a handful of topics on today's show, something we're going to get more deeply into with Jeff Sentell here coming up in just a little bit. All kinds of rumors and reports out there. We'll find out from Jeff what's actually true about this, but I assume this is true. As it relates to Georgian five-star tight end Mark Bowman, as we are told from the internet, the Georgia tight ends coach, Todd Hartley, goes all the way out to Mater Dei High School out in California to see the spring game. I guess it was last night, I think. Maybe Jeff can tell us more about that here in a little bit. Hartley out there face-to-face with Bowman, giving you an idea of just how big-time a prospect this is for UGA. And the sense that I get is that in light of everything that sort of happened with Georgia recently, we've obviously talked a lot about Tyler Atkinson this week. We'll do more of that even today. You sort of get the impression alongside a guy like Atkinson, Bowman is sort of the other guy on the other side of the ball. And there are all kinds of interesting recruits out there, and I would say unanswered questions as it relates to Georgia in this 2026 class. But Bowman is quickly coming into focus as sort of the name to know. And if Hartley really is traveling essentially 3,000 miles out west just to be on the sideline for a spring game, Well, that sort of gives you everything you need to know there, that this is someone that Georgia is really going after. And I would say this weekend, whether it be with Bowman or, other guys, it kind of feels like the calm before the storm. It's Memorial Day weekend. You're assuming that for the most part, the Georgia coaches are going to probably try to kind of stay low key. I'm sure many of the recruits and their families are also kind of trying to stay low key. Everybody wants to enjoy a little outside time. By the way, driving in this morning, the weather's just absolutely gorgeous, really pleasant, not crazy hot as of yet, just really, really nice. And so hopefully that's setting us all up to enjoy a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. Many, I'm sure, getting ready to do just that. And so this is kind of the quiet before what's about to happen, essentially every weekend for like the next roughly, the next month after that, where June is just going to be jam-packed, where you're going to have, camps and official visits and commitments. And the real, I think, shape of the 2026 class for Georgia is going to take its form here. And obviously, Mark Bowman is one of the biggest names to know. We're led to believe that Georgia made a big effort to let him know this week, Todd Hartley, exactly how important he is to this Georgia class. We are going to talk to Jeff Sentell more about that here coming up in just a moment, about just exactly how true that is and kind of how all that fits into what is about to be a very busy month for Georgia on the recruiting trail. So stay tuned for that. For a moment now, though, let me shift gears to something completely different. I've been thinking a little bit about, I guess, what I'm going to call like the hot take industrial complex. I feel like a lot of these sort of daytime TV talkers are in the news right now. And I don't know, some of the stuff you see if you kind of like watch ESPN during the day or whatever else, it's just some of the dumbest stuff you've ever seen. And oftentimes our own college football conversations as it relates to national media, they're not much better sometimes, it sort of feels like. And maybe this is a sensitive issue for me and you and people like us, because sometimes it seems like Georgia's sort of on the receiving end of some of this. And the more that I kind of think about this, I guess the more I'm concluding, this is sort of a weird take, and it's got really very little to do with our main topic of Georgia football, but it's just something I've sort of noticed. So I'm going to put this out there into the universe to see if you perhaps have noticed it too. I'm starting to think that some of the worst hot takes you see, whether it's on cable television or on streaming video or written content on the internet or just some social media post vomited out into the galaxy, I'm starting to think that some of this is bad on purpose. And the conclusion I've sort of drawn is like if you watch, for instance, daytime, cable, whether it's ESPN or FS1 or whatever else, like look how dependent these networks, the shows on these networks, look how dependent they've become on gambling advertising. Obviously, two big players in space. There are others. When you're watching these shows, you're just inundated with gambling ads all the time. Now, what do the gambling companies, the sports books, the famous ones, what do they require to be successful? They require a lot of dumb money coming into their industry, that they make their money when the public makes bad bets. Now, left to their own devices, the public's going to make bad bets more often than not. But if there's anything we can do to nudge the public to make even worse bets, to make even worse sports decisions on a regular basis, then it just sort of works out very well for these very large sports books who are the advertisers for a lot of these daytime TV shows on ESPN and a lot of the stuff you see streaming on the internet and things like that. It's one of the reasons why, for instance, like before the NBA season, if you looked at who was like the most commonly bet player to win NBA Rookie of the Year, it's like Bronny James or something like that, which is obviously a ludicrous idea, but a lot of people would draw that conclusion when they spend all summer long watching First Take or the FS1 equivalent or whatever else, and they're talking about Bronny James nonstop. They are fueling people to make these sort of bad betting decisions, and the very rich sports books get seemingly even richer. We see this in college football all the time too. A couple of years ago, it's like one of the most commonly bet teams to win the national championship was Colorado year one for Deion Sanders, which is just an asinine thing to think given the state of that roster, even with a couple of good players. But once again, when you see cable TV sort of talking about this stuff nonstop, it's very easy for a poorly informed public to now even be like misinformed, and they're sort of running to the sports book to bet the thing they saw Stephen A. or Skip Bayless or, these other guys sort of talking about on a regular basis. That I'm starting to think that some of the like really bad hot takes you see on TV and streaming internet and things like that, I'm starting to think they're sort of bad on purpose because of how much one of the most important advertiser segments to this sort of content needs poorly informed sports fans to get even more profit than they already have. And obviously, as it relates to college football, we think about this when it comes to Georgia because, listen, some years Georgia's the very best team in college football. We would say a year ago Georgia was not the very best team in college football, but Georgia's sort of always in the mix. And because it's sort of always in the mix, well, what ends up happening is it becomes kind of the venerable brand, the sort of stay tried and true. And therefore, it becomes, I would say, an easy target for those who want to make a name for themselves or who want to supply what I'm quickly starting to think might be an intentional attempt to pump a bunch of bad sports takes into the galaxy. Georgia just becomes sort of easy fodder for that. And most Georgia fans just sort of let this stuff kind of roll off their back, but you do notice it. I mean, if you're alive and kind of on the internet, even if you laugh it off, you do notice it. And here's what I'm here to tell you. If you are noticing a lot of the stuff that's out there on Georgia right now, I also want you to notice as it gets closer and closer to the start of the season, once you transition from like way too early top 25s to just preseason top 25s, and once the kind of casual college football fan starts gravitating back towards the sport because all of a sudden now the season starts to feel closer. If you've noticed all the really bad stuff that's out there on Georgia, not a top 10 team, not going to make the college football playoff, can't figure out NIL, whatever that's out there on this right now, here's what I want you to notice. That as we get closer to the start of the season, a lot of that stuff goes away. And the national media takes you'll hear about Georgia will start to be more sensible. Now, when I say sensible, I don't mean all of a sudden now people are going to come out of the woodworks and everybody's going to line up to start picking Georgia to win the national championship. I mean, I can't guarantee you that Georgia's going to do that this season. I think that you would probably say in your own mind that while you're like me and maybe optimistic about improvement in some key areas, nothing's guaranteed as far as that's concerned. There are some legitimate questions for Georgia that must be answered. That just seems fair, and I think most of us are kind of on the same page about that. But what's ridiculous is the idea that somehow, it's like the old school, like Nolan Smith thing about Georgia going in 7-5. It sort of feels like we're hearing more and more of the stuff in the media that does start to feel a little bit like, if not quite 7-5, maybe 8-4 or something like that, which would be a pretty calamitous drop for Georgia overall. But the point is if you have been hearing that stuff, you're about to hear far less of it. Let me give you an example here. Do you know who Bill Conley is from ESPN.com? He is the major sort of math guru in college football, kind of the math nerd, analytics type guy, probably the most famous player in that space. A lot of this stuff I feel like I have some intuitive understanding of. Some of this stuff kind of goes over my head. Very few of these guys ever really show their work. We don't really know exactly, what it is they're, kind of how they're tabulating some of this kind of stuff. But nonetheless, Conley's been around for a long time. His data gets a lot of respect, and it stands as a little bit of a rebuke against some of the people who've tried to make it sound like Georgia can't, walk and chew gum at the same time. The analytics from Bill Conley, we would say, are a lot more in line with what is a realistic appraisal of Georgia for the upcoming season. And in some form or fashion, when the human polls come out, coaches poll later on this summer, AP poll as well just after that, we think the analytics data from Conley is going to be a pretty accurate reflection of about where Georgia's going to fall on this particular ranking. Let me show you this on the screen here. This is straight from ESPN.com. This is a lot of numbers. It looks like a spreadsheet because it essentially is, but this is the updated post-spring version of a proprietary formula that Conley's famous for, known as SP+. And Ohio State, the reigning national champs, come in at number 1. That's perhaps not a surprise. Alabama comes in at number 2 on this. That's maybe a little bit of a surprise, but as we've been telling you, and we don't certainly take any joy in this, Alabama is one of those teams, weirdly, because we're used to Alabama getting so much attention, they actually may be a little bit undercovered right now. When our friends at On3 put out their top 100 player list the other day, Bama had 5 names on the list. There are 3 teams in the SEC that have a season win total of 9.5. Georgia and Texas are 2. Bama's the 3rd. That there's some questions around Kalen DeBoer. We don't know who the Alabama starting quarterback is going to be. But overall, Alabama probably still ranks as the toughest game on the Georgia schedule, alongside of Texas, if not the Bama game a little bit tougher. This is still a really, really formidable challenger. Then you've got Penn State that spent big to keep guys in the fold, bringing in the wide receiver from Syracuse. Among the more hyped teams this offseason, Bill Connelly and his data, they also like them as well. Nittany Lions coming in at number 3. Then you've got Georgia coming in at number 4. And once again, I'd love to tell you that Georgia will win the national championship for sure. Obviously, I don't know that. I would say it's fairly easy for me to disregard this notion that somehow Georgia's not a top 10 team or not going to make the college football playoff. I would say that a lot would have to go wrong for that to be the case, that where Bill Connelly has Georgia, even if I don't fully understand the math ranking he uses to get them there, I do like Georgia right now as about a preseason number 4 or so. I believe that's about where they're going to be when it comes to the coaches poll, the AP poll, the true preseason polls that are about to come out. Now, to dive a little deeper on this just for a moment, for all the attention Mike Bobo, the Georgia offense, has gotten, Paul Feinbaum, who was earlier in the spring saying you could walk up and down Peachtree Street and find a better offensive coordinator than Mike Bobo. Strangely enough, when Paul was with Kirby Smart, didn't ask him about that directly, but nonetheless, Feinbaum's been among those sort of fanning the flames about all of this. All of that said, Bill Connelly still got the Georgia offense preseason number 8, according to his analytics formula. He's also got the Georgia defense at number 4. He's got special teams for what it's worth at number 1. So all of that looks really good on paper for Georgia, for someone who's not just sort of pulling this out of nowhere. He's using some sort of mathematical formula to arrive at this. You got Georgia at number 4 right now. Now, the other thing he has is strength of schedule-wise. Georgia is the 13th toughest schedule in the country, which, as we've said before, we think by the time the games are played, it may turn out that the Georgia schedule is even tougher this year than it was a year ago. Connelly doesn't rank it as the toughest schedule in America, but he certainly ranks it among the toughest. And if you're watching on video, one small point that I'll make here before I move on to something different is that when you look at the strengths of schedule for the various Big Ten, SEC teams that kind of populate Bill Connelly's top 10, just notice over and over how much tougher the SEC schedules are than the Big Ten schedules. For instance, Ohio State at number 1 has the 21st toughest schedule. Bama at number 2 has the 11th. Penn State at number 3 has the 29th toughest schedule. Georgia at number 4 has the 13th. You got Texas with the 12th toughest schedule, Notre Dame the 44th. Oregon's got the 32nd toughest schedule, LSU's got the 9th. On and on you go here. It is a consistent theme that these SEC teams are just playing far tougher schedules. Now, the final point I want to make on this is, speaking of the hot take stuff, I think it's also interesting when you see who Georgia's ranked behind, Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama. But it's equally, if not more interesting to me, who Georgia's ranked one spot ahead of. Georgia at 4, coming ahead of Texas at number 5. Now, doesn't that seem a little bit more like it? That a year ago, we saw Georgia, if you may have forgotten, I know last fall, a long time ago. A year ago, we saw Georgia beat Texas, say it with me, twice. And yet, somehow, some way, the hot take industrial complex that I referenced before seems to have no living memory of Georgia's success against the Longhorns. To hear the streaming video people tell it, or the cable news people tell it, more like cable sports TV, but nonetheless, the sort of prominent voices around college football, to hear them tell it. Georgia's just sort of fighting and scratching and clawing to even get up to Texas's level, as opposed to feeding it to Texas twice in December in Atlanta, in October in the Longhorns' own stadium. So the fact that Bill Connelly, crunching his numbers, has Georgia ahead of Texas, I would say that's a welcome reprieve from some of the nonsense we've had to hear. As a reminder of that, just for fun, and as we've said before, this is two guys we sort of like, Peter Burns, Chris Doering from the SEC Network. We're entertained by them for the most part. They've been guests on our show, and they'll be welcome to be guests here again in the future. But the other day, when they're talking about the SEC running through Texas, we thought that was ridiculous at the time. And now that Bill Connelly, I think correctly, has Georgia ahead of Texas in his analytics formula for the 2025 season, it's an important reminder of just how crazy things have been when it comes to hot takes over the last few weeks. So with Connelly having Georgia ahead of Texas, let's kind of give you a sharp contrast from the sort of analytics, numeric-based evaluation of Connelly, the more sort of hot take focus of Doering and Burns on the radio the other day. Take a listen to this.
We are seeing things that we haven't seen from Georgia before, right? We're seeing the inability to retain the roster. They were like one of the last schools to be able to keep their team in place and have the kind of depth that you have to be able to win championships the way that Alabama did, the way that Georgia did. That they were hurt last year up the middle of their defense with injuries and not having that next wave of player to be able to step in. We're seeing things from Georgia before where they go and they get manhandled by Ole Miss the way that they did. We're seeing things from them get physically beaten the way that they did by Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. These are things that are signs of concern, and knowing what the landscape of college football is now, we don't necessarily know if it can sustain in this type of
they were absolutely built on the foundation what Nick Saban built in Tuscaloosa, which is I have a draft pick, and then the backup of that draft pick is a draft pick, and the backup of that draft pick is a freshman who will eventually become a NFL draft pick, right? That's what Saban was able to do, and he was able to stack this talent on the depth chart. And that's why players said, all right, well, I don't mind being a third stringer here because I'm learning from the best. The scouts are already at practice. Everybody's eyes are on us when we get a chance to play. And in 2 or 3 years, I'm going to develop to an NFL guy. That style of college football or that roster management or stacking of talent is no longer available because of NIL and the transfer portal. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. And again, it's not necessarily a demise. It's just I don't know how you can continue to build upon that. And then the question kind of stems for, all right, if Georgia's a team that has struggled, is it Texas that's now the superpower of the SEC going back-to-back in their college football playoff runs? Now, in fact, that they're looking at spending $35 to $40 million on this roster. If you're going to look at the numbers, the SEC does not run through Georgia right now. The SEC powerhouse are the Texas Longhorns.
So once again, I like Peter Burns. I like Chris Doering. That was perhaps the craziest thing we've heard in the last few weeks. You know, the idea that somehow the word we got used is struggle. Georgia has struggled. Not quite demise, but apparently slipping. And now the SEC runs through Texas, despite the fact that Georgia's the reigning SEC champs. That's the kind of sort of hot takery we've had to endure over the course of the last few months. But as the season gets closer, the good news is a lot of that is going to go away. That analytics formulas like the one that Bill Connelly presents are going to be a little bit more commonplace, and they're going to inform the actual preseason poll voters, who I can promise you are not going to have Georgia outside the top 10. They're going to have Georgia a little closer where a guy like Connelly sees them, somewhere around 4th, maybe 5th, and they'll realize very much like what Bill Connelly's number suggests. This is probably still a chance at a top 10 offense. This is still a chance at a top 10 defense. And even playing against one of the toughest schedules in the country, this is a team that still has a very good chance to be among the very best in the entire country. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. We are happy you're with us no matter how you get to us across all platforms. Video, 10 a.m., radio, noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 Ref, podcast, wherever you find them. Just really, really thrilled to have you as a part of our program today. And a huge thanks to our friends at Kroger who make it all possible. Now, here's what I love about Kroger. You got so much going on there. Obviously, many of you becoming a Kroger Boost member, and you're making, twice the fuel points and the things you're already buying at your local Kroger. But when it comes to stuff that you're buying at Kroger, I love the way in which Kroger is always working to make all of this as convenient as they can possibly be. So you're getting your groceries, you're getting stocked up for that Memorial Day cookout, but you're also taking care of your pharmacy needs there at your local Kroger there as well, because Kroger's Pharmacy provides all the services that you could possibly imagine from any pharmacy you want to go to. You can transfer your prescriptions, you can get vaccines if you need them, and so much more. So you can go to Kroger Health online and find out more about this. You can talk in store and just see all of that at your local Kroger. Take care of your pharmacy needs right there on site. You're going to love the chance to be able to do that. We're so happy to have Kroger as a part of DawgNation Daily as our sponsor here today. We're also looking forward to have Jeff Sentell coming up in just a couple of minutes. A lot to get into with Jeff. We'll talk more about the Mark Bowman stuff, the very aggressive push that Georgia seems to be making towards him. The conversation that Jeff broadcast this week with five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson. We'll also have some fun with that as well before our show is done today, too. So a lot of that coming up on the recruiting front here with Jeff Sentell, as you've come to expect on a Friday. That is on the way. Prior to that, though, let's get ready to go around the doghouse here for a moment. And I'm presented today by Zagoria Law on Around the Doghouse. And I want to focus in on another list here. I told you we're going to throw a bunch of stuff out there today. Another list here for a moment. This is a list a lot of Georgia fans have been sort of left scratching their heads at. So we at least wanted to address this coming up, for a couple of minutes. Do you know who from The Athletic, that is a website, Stuart Mandel, he is a national writer, recently charged with the task of ranking the 25 best teams in college football since the year 2000. I'm going to tell you right now. There is a reason we don't do a lot of this kind of stuff on this show, just simply because that's 25 years. I have a hard time remembering what I had for lunch yesterday. So remembering 25 years worth of college football, no easy feat. If I try to do this, there's almost certainly a chance I would leave something out just because that is a lot to remember when it comes to a quarter century. But nonetheless, an omission from Mandel's list of the 25 best teams in the last 25 years has certainly got some attention. So here around the doghouse, presented by Zagoria Law, let me show you this on the screen here just for a moment. So best team of this basically century so far, according to Mandel, 2001 Miami. LSU 2019 comes in second. I might flip-flop those, but that's fine. You've got 2005 Texas coming in number 3. He's got 2020 Alabama coming in at number 4. Look, that to me is a total misunderstanding of the pandemic, which is ironic given the fact that Stuart Mandel was very into the pandemic. But to me, that's a huge misunderstanding of just sort of pandemic era sports. I mean, look around the sports world from that time. 2020 Dodgers. We don't think of that as a serious team. LeBron, Lakers. We don't think of that as a serious team. Like, when the history of sports is told, the pandemic era is not going to be included. NBA games taking place in a bubble at Disney World, college football games taking place in empty stadiums with fake noise being pumped in. Alabama's got a lot of teams, perhaps, that warrant inclusion in a conversation like this. I don't think anything from 2020 belongs in that. I mean, this is a year in which, Texas A&M was like a top 10 team. A&M has never won anything in the SEC. Florida won the SEC East. That's the only success they've had since, current recruits have even been alive. A lot of weird stuff happened in the pandemic. So I simply can't listen to the idea that a team from 2020 is somehow historic among the 4 best from this century here thus far, just given how, nonsense and Mickey Mouse that year was compared to everything else. But nonetheless, the issue as it relates to Georgia is that while the 2022 Georgia team is included on this list, they come in at number 7, no small feat to be 7th best team of the last quarter century. The 2021 Georgia Bulldogs are not included. Mandel was asked about this by a fan who said having Georgia 22nd I should say having the 2022 Georgia team at 7, but not having the 2021 team on the list is certainly something. Mandel responds back to that on X a few days ago, saying, I found it hard to include teams with blowout losses during the season in a list of, quote, greatest of the century. And he mentioned some other teams who he excluded for that same reason. Now, obviously, you might, I'm sure, not be surprised to learn this. I don't agree with that reasoning. And clearly, the 2021 SEC championship game was not a close game for Georgia. Georgia lost that game decisively. But it was also not a game of consequence either. And this is one of those things I think that Georgia fans should always kind of keep in mind in the ongoing sort of war of words they have with Alabama. The one thing that Alabama seems to have over Georgia, its fans, is the lack of success that Georgia has enjoyed against Alabama. And on the one hand, you can't dispute that. That's just factually accurate. But in the sport of arguing, you could also spin that a couple of different directions if you want to. In other words, this idea that the 2021 SEC championship game, a glorified exhibition, is some sort of dark mark against Georgia, you don't have to stipulate that as being true. It's also worth remembering to these Bama people who throw this stuff in your face that this year will be the very first time that Bama has ever come into Georgia Stadium in the Kirby Smart era. Georgia's had to travel there twice. And frankly, a lot of the losses to Bama from Georgia at the very beginning of the Kirby Smart era came when Bama was established as a very big favorite going into the game. So you don't have to stipulate anything you don't want to when it comes to what Bama fans say to you about losing, including this obsession with the 2021 SEC championship, despite the fact that Georgia won the game that mattered in the national championship after the fact. The other thing I'll say is, we've got to move a little quickly here. The other thing I'm going to say is, just notice this, whether it be someone like this ranking all-time great national champions or the College Football Playoff Committee trying to rank teams in a given year. The stuff that the SEC is really good at always somehow seems to get overlooked. When it comes to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, the fact that the SEC does play tougher schedules, week to week, more grueling opponents, somehow that doesn't ever seem to matter when we're kind of ranking teams in the College Football Playoff. It's an easy thing, a necessary thing maybe even to overlook. If you want the college football landscape to feel more balanced, you have to pretend that all teams with the same record are roughly the same, despite the fact that the SEC, as the Bill Connolly numbers we showed you a moment ago, demonstrate just how different it is. And the same thing's true here. You can make up some sort of criteria to rank anybody anywhere you want to. It's also very convenient to, I think, disregard the thing that made the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs such a, I would say, super team among the best of all time from any era, is just the sheer number of future NFL draft picks that played on the team. I mean, virtually everyone that's played on that team has eventually gotten drafted, and there's a couple, I guess, we're still on the team that are, yet to be drafted. But the point is, the NFL draft capital alone would make this one of the great teams of all time. But it's the sort of thing that's sort of easy to forget if you find forgetting that thing convenient so you can make college football seem more balanced than it otherwise is. So before we bring on Jeff Sentell, just for fun, for a moment, in light of the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs being overlooked on the list of great teams of this century, let's go back to the night they beat Alabama. This was really fun audio shared from the Georgia locker room, from Kirby Smart, telling that team what really mattered in terms of their memory and their legacy. And certainly there's no national writer in some make-believe list that can take that away from the Dogs. This is from the night the Dogs beat Alabama.
All right, guys, listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully. I never in my life been more proud of a group of men. Because you know what? It wasn't easy, Devontae. It wasn't easy, right? How many days? How many lifts? How many lifts? Yeah. A lot. Hey. How many stadium steps? 15. How many games? 15. Damn right. Nobody blinked. AD on top. That won the game. Defense, hell of a job affecting the quarterback. Huge block field goal. Okay? Yeah, I'm mighty proud of the way you played. I want you all to take 1 second, okay? 1 second of deep breath. I want you to remember this picture for the rest of your life. Because I don't care what you do, where you go, Darnell, how much you play, Broderick, they can't ever take this away from you. You understand that? Special. I told you, best leaders I've ever seen. And it's only because of y'all. You went to the skull sessions. You went to the list. You bought into it, and I appreciate it. Don't ever, ever, ever think somebody can take that away from you. Proud as hell of you. But you seniors have been special, man. You have been so special. Think about the guys that decided to come back, the guys that bought in and did it the right way. We need that. I am so proud of what you've done, okay? We're going to crank that music. Enjoy this thing. I'm proud as hell of you. I love the commitment that all of you had. But tonight, man, you enjoy this thing and you be proud of what you did.
So listen, that's the truth right there. An amazing speech. Like Kirby off the cuff, like extemporaneously is as good as it gets, and that's an awesome speech. And as Kirby says, hey, none of that can ever be taken away from you. So we would say the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs rank among the best of all time, and we don't frankly care where they land on anybody else's list. Strong words there from Kirby Smart, and that's Around the Doghouse, presented today by our friends at Zagoria Law, the dog bite injury lawyers all over the state of Georgia, handling business and taking care of business for those who kind of find themselves in a tough situation. You've been bitten, injured by a dog, owner of that dog, negligent in the care. Well, for us, that's no different than any other personal injury situation. You deserve to have somebody on your side fighting for the compensation you need. That's what our friends at Zagoria Law do. They're helping people recover in situations like this in Atlanta, across the state of Georgia, taking care of you wherever you are in this state. If you've been bitten or knocked down by a dog, I want you to reach out to Zagoria Law. They're the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people that have been bitten by dogs, knocked down by dogs, injuries that are related to some sort of interaction with a dog where the owner wasn't taking proper care of that. That's what Zagoria Law is all about. David Zagoria has been practicing law for over 20 years, and that team at Zagoria Law, they're going to deliver high-quality representation with a personal touch and to make sure that you and your family are well taken care of if you kind of find yourself in a tough situation like this. So give them a call, 833-GA-DOGBITE. That's D-O-G. 833-GA-DOGBITE or online, ZagoriaLaw.com. All right, we have gone way over time here. We're obviously thrilled to have Zagoria Law as part of Around the Doghouse. We've gone way over time, though. So without further ado, let me kind of dive into this. Let's get some UGA recruiting talk here right now. Facts about Mark Bowman, Tyler Atkinson, all that kind of stuff. Let's do all of that here with Jeff Sentell here today on DawgNation Daily.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
All right, let me say hello to Jeff Sentell. A lot of recruiting talk to get into with him, and I apologize for getting to him late. Jeff, it sort of feels like the calm before the storm here a little bit. Obviously, the month of June is going to be massive. Official visits and camp offers and the class starting to take shape and things like that. Memorial Day, probably a little quiet there on that. We were, though, to begin the show today, reacting to a rumor, report, whatever you want to call it. I guess that Todd Hartley had gone out to Mater Dei to see Mark Bowman. That's a long way to go to watch a spring football game. If that is indeed true, that is certainly an indication of just how big Bowman is for Georgia's wish list here in this class of 2026. Anything you can add to that for us? Looks like Georgia kind of pulling in all the stops for Mark Bowman here right now.
Yeah, Brandon, we tout Mark Bowman as the number one player now on the top targets list for UGA. I just think it's basically for the reason why you just try to amplify Jared Curtis. We know things are happening now with the class, Brandon. The highest rated guy will definitely be Jared Curtis, who's rated anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a lot of the latest polls or services. And then Bowman would be an extension of how you make him better. Intriguing, though, to look at those travels, because Brandon, I've got a theory now, and I don't know whether it's going to create some exhaustion or a breaking point among DawgNation. It's becoming increasingly clear to me. Maybe you can look at redistribution of the funds in the chase for Jackson Cantwell, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think Georgia can lose this recruitment because it's wired to win it. But then there's the whole thing of, hey, how much is Ole Miss going to bid? How much is Oregon going to bid? How much is the most likely challenger to Georgia, Texas, going to bid? So this feels to me now like Georgia, this is one they can't lose because the only reason they can lose would be because of the bidding. And if we're going to pay players and Georgia has a stockpile of money, well, Brandon, there's only 2 really 5-stars left that Georgia has a real shot at signing. That's Mark Bowman and then Tyler Atkinson, we've talked about, I'm sure we'll talk about today. So The cross-country travel is interesting, Brendan. I think it's basically at modern day. It's for spring workouts, like spring drills. They don't have formal spring practices in a lot of the California leagues. Also, some interesting travel to monitor, Brandon. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Malachi Lee, who stands to be the highest-rated tackle Georgia can sign now, and shoot, USC is going to be tough there. Michigan's going to be tough there, but line coach Stacy Searles now has taken not one but 2 trips out to Hawaii.
Nice.
To visit with Malachi Lee. So just imagine that. He was at Georgia for G-Day. So that's another one where Georgia's spending a lot of travel miles at least to go recruit.
I want to see Stacy Searles out visiting Malachi, wearing like the sort of the Tommy Bahama style shirt with like the sort of tropical type look. I want to see that from Stacy Searles. That'd be kind of a fun. Talk about drawing a nice duty from the recruiting part of that to get a chance to go travel out to Hawaii. I'm guessing that's a long trip. He's certainly got plenty of plane time to deal with, but I'm guessing that's probably a kind of a fun opportunity if you're Stacy Searles getting a chance to do that.
Brandon, do you think Kirby's got him in first class? I mean, Stacy Searles is 6'6", man.
That's right. He's a tall guy himself. That is a long way to fly coach for a tall man like Coach Searles.
Get him the exit row at least or something like that, Comfort Plus. But certainly shows ambition because you hear a lot about USC and Michigan with Malachi, Brandon. And listen, one of the storylines we're tracking is, okay, who's the tackle going to be? It's not Jackson Cantwell. Is it Georgia polishing up some diamonds in the rough? Well, Malachi Lee, if you look at him, you look at these players on the hoof, about the only thing he doesn't have that Jackson Cantwell have is just the pure strength. The traits are similar. He's actually got longer arms. The feet are just as good. I mean, Malachi, you look at him and you can say that guy can easily be a left because of the feet and the movement ability and the ball get off right there. But again, Brandon, we don't expect this to be hard, man. It's a premium elite offensive tackle that is not kind of tethered up somewhere, that's not married up somewhere. So there's not a lot of these guys. You have to pay a premium for these guys. And I think, Malachi Lee and also Mark Bowman, which we started our discussion off with today, those are guys you're going to have to pay for.
So let me ask you this, going back to Bowman for a minute. Since he's been kind of reclassified into 2026, he's sort of been kind of a name of note. I think he's quickly becoming one of the more popular recruits in this class. Anytime a recruit reminds you of another Georgia player, whether the comparison's fair or not, there's always going to be an extra level of popularity for a player that seems to have kind of an easy comp. And fair or not, the Brock Bowers comp is at least easy for Mark Bowman, no matter how accurate it turns out to be. He's incredibly popular, and probably he's overshadowed the discussion that we would be having about other guys of a similar position fit that I really like. For instance, Caden Prothro is a guy that, going back to last year's state championship, for him, Bowden, not that I didn't already think he was a good player, but he really won me over as, I would say, pound for pound, one of the best overall athletes in our state here for this year. How does Georgia's pursuit of Bowman impact a guy like Prothro right now?
Yeah, good question, Brandon. Number one, it's a defensible position with Bowman to say he could be the best player in the country, best prospect in the country, because he's one of those sure thing guys. And what's a sure thing guy right now? Number one, does he have clear NFL skills? Yes. Is he projectionable? Low miss rate, all that. Does he make the room of guys around him better with his work ethic? I think he does all that. But with Prothro, I think it's going to be kind of seamless, man, because Prothro doesn't really want to be seen as that traditional attached tight end. There's a plan for him, and maybe it involves a little bit of what Noah Thomas will look like. It involves that flex position where you're going to play a lot of wide receiver. Brandon, all we have to do is kind of follow where he's been slotting. And what I mean by that is he goes to the Under Armour All-American game, Brandon, back in January, where he's one of those select few juniors among the seniors now. And he spent the whole week working out at wide receiver. He was even named by a couple of the national services. I believe On3 was one of them that named him the overall top performer on, I believe, day 2 of the practices. So he's kind of fine with it, Brandon. He understands it's going to be how his body goes. If he gets up to 250, 255, 260, then he knows he'll be a tight end. But if he stays around 230, which he's really a very chiseled 218, 220 right now, but if he stays around that wide receiver range, 220, 235, then he knows he'll play a lot more receivers. So I think he's fine with it. I think he's just looking for the best fit so much as how much am I going to play a tight end versus wide receiver.
I think it's really interesting. So conversation with Tyler Atkinson that you were part of got a lot of attention here this week. We've certainly talked about it on our show. you get the impression that obviously Atkinson's got more finalists than maybe he feels like he's got room to take official visits. He's certainly keeping his cards very close to the vest on that. For Georgia, it sort of seems like kind of a classic recruitment right now. We've heard Glenn Schumann's name mentioned a lot by players like Atkinson throughout the years. It seems like that relationship's really strong. Georgia leaning on its legacy. You know, if you want to make the Brock Bowers, Mark Bowman kind of tie in, well, you can easily do that with guys like Roquan Smith and now Jalen Walker. And obviously they've been factors in Atkinson's recruitment. I also kind of find it interesting that of 10 finalists, the other school that Atkinson's kind of mentioning by name right now is Clemson, because I would say that for some people, you know, to hear Clemson so prominently mentioned sort of feels like a reversal of what people I think have assumed is a recent trend of, you know, Clemson being less of a factor in this type of stuff. But to hear Atkinson tell it, and by the way, the preseason rankings may be suggesting this too, that Clemson still has the potential to be a nemesis for Georgia on the recruiting trail. So I found all of that interesting. Georgia sort of recruiting Atkinson kind of the way you think they would. But also the presence of Clemson here, sending their entire coaching staff to visit him, for instance. Tell us a little bit more about how you found Atkinson, getting the chance to speak with him face-to-face.
Brendan, I think first of all, he's had some good media training. We're always a big fan of that. But also he seems a little bit more guarded with his information now that it's getting really close. Here's a big picture kind of thread I want you to look at, or a lens I want you to look at, and everybody out there to look at when it comes to Atkinson. This recruitment has been planned. It has been designed. There's some very smart thinking that's going into it. And the one thing they don't want is they don't want a decommitment. They don't want that harsh sidestep, that backtrack of what they want to do, because that's kind of not the way Tyler Atkinson's brand is all about. I think it's very interesting. We're already sensing a pattern here, Brandon, with the first one. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but you know how typically recruits will basically announce all 4 or 5, their string of summer official visits all at once. And Brendan, for the most part, they've been doing it in like February and March, just kind of getting that all nailed down. Look at Atkinson. He's really only announced one official visit. That's the Clemson. When we all knew kind of that Clemson had to be getting the May 30th official visit, because Clemson preaches that scarcity, where that's the only official visit window they have for the summer for their mega prospects. So Clemson, we've seen this in years past, Brandon. They did it with KJ Bolden and a lot of others. They make sure they get an official visit on the weekend they want the guys by saying there's only one. Clever marketing trick there by Dabo. But if you look at even some very impressive marketing on its own, I think they're only going to announce the official visits one at a time. Like, it's what the pattern looks like right now. And I think that's different, because I think everybody's going to try to get Tyler Atkinson to shut it down when he's on these visits. So it will be interesting to watch going forward. Brendan even gave us a timeline about he wants to have it done before the summer. That was interesting, because he wants to have it out of his way to run it back to win another state title at Grayson. And they do look loaded again, Brandon. So much was made. I thought it was very interesting how he mentioned Clemson had made a move and how Clemson sent its whole defensive coaching staff. If you ask me, is the whole Clemson defensive coaching staff, even one with Mickey Kahn and that great Kahn name at Grayson High School, those connections. Of course, Mickey Kahn is now an assistant coach on that staff. But you take all those Clemson guys in one hand, and then you got Jalen Walker and Roquan Smith having a conversation with him in the other hand. I think Georgia kind of evens that one out right there. So there's a lot going on, Brandon, with Tyler Atkinson. I just really think that this is one that's going to catch a lot of eyes, especially in the NIL era, because you'd think the best NIL package, Brandon, I don't just mean pure dollars, I mean pure opportunities here, would be in the state of Georgia, where Atkinson has spent 3 years plus building his name as an elite football player. And I think most people know who Tyler Atkinson is in college football right now, even a lot of the casual football fans in the state.
I think that's really interesting. A visitor to Georgia this past weekend that you wrote about and had a chance to speak to at DawgNation.com is the Carrollton receiver, Ryan Mosley, and really good story, interesting quotes from Mosley. But as someone who's always trying to read between the lines, I don't know how successfully I read between the lines on this. Clearly, he had a nice visit to Georgia. He told you the relationship he has with Georgia is now bettered because of that visit. I still don't know that I quite have a perception of where things stand with the 4-star receiver Mosley and Georgia right now. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know how much reading between the lines even matters these days, even more. Because if your bingo card, he said the word family. He said he loves it. He grew up a Georgia fan, and he feels like a priority. Georgia is also doing the double dip of recruiting him to play not only a receiver but a safety in real meaningful minutes on Saturdays, and I think that's impressive. I've never heard that before, kind of thrown around like this between Georgia and a recruit. But I feel like there's in a phase where things are good with Mosley, but it's not over yet with Mosley. And I think that's been done for a while. I thought it was one of the more intriguing parts of that story, Brandon. I don't know if you caught it or not, was he said that Georgia has been asking him to go ahead and, hey, if you feel like it, just go ahead and shut it down and make this thing, and let's end this thing. And he said he did give some consideration, and he's still giving some consideration and thought to that about just go ahead and shutting things down. But Nebraska, Texas A&M, Alabama, and South Carolina, those are the other contenders there for Mosley. And again, home state means a lot. I think the unique pitch means a lot, and that there's really a strong family feel. I remember talking to Ryan in February, and I asked him, hey, man, what's the real deal with you in Georgia? And he basically was like, man, it's Kirby. Kirby's like the straw that stirs the drink. He said he just loves Kirby Smart, man. And I think that's one thing Georgia can really trade on is they know that Kirby went to school there. They know that Kirby played there. They know that Kirby coached there, and then he came back there. And there's a lot to like about a guy that's been Georgia for so long. And there's something very authentic about that to young men like Ryan Mosley.
So this is the portion where I'm going to play the hits. I've been asked now for a couple of weeks to ask you, and I guess I'm going to get into it now, a little bit more about Georgia running back recruiting, where the names we kind of most prominently hear, I think lately it's been guys like, Jay Lamar, obviously Derek Cooper's still out there, but there's also a guy like Savion Hyder, out there as well. And like the real priorities for Georgia when it comes to this running back position, I think people are a little curious about that, especially with relatively new running backs coach at Georgia, where I think in the past, if it's Dell McGee, you kind of have an idea of kind of where McGee was going to gravitate towards sometimes anyway. I would say that it's a little bit of a different era for Georgia running back recruiting. So what can you tell us with guys like Lamar and Cooper and Hyder? What can you tell us about what the real priorities are for Georgia and the running back position?
Let me give you a clarifier first, Brandon, because there's a way that I want folks to look at this now. Look at what Saquon Barkley did in the NFL. He resurrected, so to speak, the running back position.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is the elite running back position. The guy that can carry you to a Super Bowl, the guy that you can give a lot of money to. Brandon, we could say very, very probably accurately that as far as the NFL goes, there was a running back recession in how much those guys got paid, how much they were valued, and how important they were to the team's overall bottom line wins and losses.
Well, for a while they were like banding together. They were basically like going to like try to, sort of a union within the union to say, hey, what happened to running backs? I think we also had, am I right? We had 3 first-round picks be running backs this year. Am I right about that?
Yeah. So now we use the word recession. Now let me hit my R's again for all the alliterative folks out there. Here you have a renaissance right now.
Yeah.
And like if the NFL's paying for it, colleges are going to pay for it. It used to be that running backs, they only have 2 contracts in the NFL. So they were asking for a lot more coming out of high school. And Georgia was like, nah, bro, that's all right with me. We good with that. But now, and again, Brandon, I really look at Georgia's recruiting from a big picture this way. Man, last year, aside from the wide receiver position, they really filled up the coffers with defensive guys. They got some edge guys. They got some safety guys they like. They got the linebacker that they really liked in Zayden Walker. They got the defensive lineman. And when I mean premium positions, Isaiah Gibson, throw him in there as well. So that was a really defensive-handed class. So I think this year, I'm going to say this a lot because this is what I believe. They've got their cornerstone, their anchor in Jared Curtis. And how do you make sure he wins and flies and soars? Well, you already got the veteran receivers that will have a year of age on him. Can you imagine Curtis throwing as a sophomore year to a junior C.J. Wiley, to a junior Elias Williams, to a junior Talon Taylor, to a junior Ethan Barbour? All that stuff looks really, really good. So now you got to make sure you have the backs around him, Brandon. let's look at the facts. Georgia only signed one back in the last class. That means they got to get two. Brendan, I think they're gonna pull out billfold a little bit for one of these backs. Now, Miami looms with Derek Cooper, and I think, Brandon, I don't know if you saw the Seven Cloud news this week, but we always thought Oregon would be Georgia's number one nemesis in this class of 2026. It looks like it's going to be Miami, especially, Brandon. It's almost like funny. You see Georgia offer a guy, and then 2 or 3 days later, Miami's offering the same guy. But now Rosenhaus with Cloud, Seven Cloud signing with Rosenhaus Sports. You've got Miami looming there. Miami already knew it was going to go head to head and pay a premium for Derek Cooper. Well, if you're going to pay a premium for one of your backs, I think Georgia is now really intrigued by how much it might take to maybe win the war or have the paddle up longest in the auction house for Savion Hyder out of Virginia. Josh Crawford went to see him again this week. He took his second trip. Brandon, Hyder is special. That's all you got to say. He is special for any recruiting class. And listen, there's always somebody that everybody ranks or elevates. The number one back is always seen as the greatest thing since sliced bread. But Savion is a little bit different, and it's a little bit different for Georgia fans because they would like to get into those deep waters and come home with one whale of a running back in terms of Savion Hyder. I think Georgia has always been one of the top 2, maybe 3 schools for Hyder from the longest. And it'll be very interesting once he takes his visits this summer.
So you mentioned Seven Cloud. I wanted to finish this. We had talked about this earlier this week, which is, I don't make any apologies for this. I don't like Drew Rosenhaus. I don't like that style of agent in college football. That to me is not a positive development if there's going to be more of that in the sport. I know this comes across like sour grapes of, well, Georgia just lost, Jackson Cantwell, Rosenhaus involved there. Honestly, I have no idea what's going to happen with the future of Seven Cloud. And frankly, Rosenhaus represents a few Georgia players in the NFL level. So it's not like he necessarily has a bad relationship with UGA. This is not about where Seven Cloud goes, but just based on your reporting throughout the years, this is actually a really good story. Georgia has stuck with Seven Cloud through a lot. Watched him develop both as a player and, as we're led to believe, kind of a young man too, and really grown up and matured. That's the sort of thing I think is good for college football. The sort of swooping in the last minute transactional nature of some of these agents, whether it's Rosenhaus or somebody different, I don't view that as a positive development. What do you make of the fact that kind of here at the 11th hour, someone like Seven Cloud, who's been, kind of with Georgia for the long haul, suddenly kind of adding the kind of agent that you might be led to believe is now going to try to turn this into a bidding war?
Well, Brandon, here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that the number for 7, and it's kind of, I'm not trying to make a pun or a quip or a joke here, but because the name 7 means a lot. It's a special meaning to his family. It's a biblical reference, but I think a lot of Georgia fans will now associate 7 with 7 figures because I think that's what Seven Cloud can get. He's a player. Remember, Brandon, there's a maturity edge here where he was supposed to sign in the class of 2023 out of McEachern. Here we are in 2026, Brandon. We're talking about a guy that will be 22, 23 years old for that one season of college football. I think I can see a future where he is clearly in the top 2. He's with the 2s as soon as he arrives at a place even like Georgia. And he's a guy that should be a one-and-done player because he's shown it, Brandon. He looked good at the JUCO level last year. He's going to have some of that more grown man strength going against other veteran players, and he's just going to be a more mature prospect. So I think 7 is going to – I wouldn't be surprised, Brandon. This would not be a shocker. And you know what? Part of me wants to say, I'm a big fan of stories rather than rankings and, where these kids eventually wind up because 7 has a remarkable story. He was at McEachern. He was just a young kid that didn't have it figured out. He didn't go to class. He had to drop out of school. He had to get his GED. He was playing some AAU basketball, showed how athletic he was. And a JUCO coach said, hey, come play for us. And he's like, all right. He gets his GED. And then he gets to the junior college level in Kansas and he rips up a knee. He has a knee injury. So he sits for another year. And like the traditional junior college storyline, there's a rose growing up amongst the concrete, and that was 7. And some might say, look at him now. He's getting what he's worth. He's really went through a lot of overcoming a bad situation that he created for himself, but he's rectified it for himself. And now maybe the good fortune will come maybe a year earlier than that NFL dream. But for him, it's a thing where you look at it. I just wish the optics were a little bit better, especially how he said basically a month or two ago that he's shut down, he's over, he's done. Brendan, another great kernel of his story is his late father always dreamed of him playing for Georgia. And Brandon, Georgia was always the school. Like when he went to junior college and he rehabbed that knee and he got back into the game, all he was thinking about is earning himself a path back to Georgia. And now it gets a little bit more complicated. You would think, what's a likely first team, second teams, maybe potential starter for one season worth in the SEC? Maybe it is over $1 million. Maybe it's a lot more than that. I know all the big names will get interested, but maybe it turns back for the course and Rosenhaus just finds the best money for his client, and it's at the University of Georgia. But we can certainly see a way pretty soon where this might open back up, and it might be Seven Clouds seeing what everybody has to offer in the billfold category.
Well, we'll certainly follow that as we say goodbye here, too. Obviously, it's a Memorial Day weekend coming up for all of us, but for you, it's even more so than that. I know your daughter's getting ready to graduate high school. I just wanted to extend congratulations to you and your entire family there on that milestone moment. Thrilling times here. I know how proud you are. And for so many people who kind of find themselves in similar circumstances, we just send congratulations out to everybody. But Jeff, to you in particular, it's been fun watching her grow up over the years and your family grow up around her. So certainly thrilling news here. Congratulations.
Tell you what, Brandon, you old softy, I was going to get in trouble if I didn't mention this. So I'm glad you teed it up for me. But listen, for all you got parents out there going through it, rough week, man. You got to hold the tears back. You got to hold the special memories. You're digging up old photos for some graduation events. It is very, very hard this week. So congratulations to everybody watching, everybody out there that has graduates, that has class of 2025 going through. And Brandon, I don't mind sharing it with the world because I'm a proud dad that she's also going to go to school at Athens.
That's
as well.
Awesome. That's really amazing. Just to even get into Georgia these days is an amazing feat and a tremendous accomplishment. So I know how proud you are of that. That's certainly thrilling to hear.
Yeah, she got all her brains and her looks from her mama, so that she was good. She was good with all that. But man, it's awesome. It's really heartfelt, and she's going to be up in the Classic City. And man, maybe that'll give us an excuse to take an extra trip or two up to Athens over the course of the year. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Jeff, great stuff. Thank you so much, and enjoy the weekend. And once again, congratulations on the pending graduation here. And we'll talk to you very soon on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger.
See you, buddy. Have a great rest of your show.
You too.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
It has somehow turned into a marathon show in some respects. We did not quite intend for that to be the case. We'll see if we can pick up the pace here on the way out the door. But I will say, obviously, Jeff, as you would be, emotional about seeing his daughter graduate. I'm the same way, every year with my kids. My son's going in 8th grade. My daughter's going into 5th grade. She just turned 10 last week. And it's amazing, every single one of these little milestones, I'm sort of emotional about all of those. I can only imagine what I'll be when it comes to a high school graduation. Obviously, for me, still years away. Only imagine, what that's going to be like. And it's kind of wild, this is the 10-year anniversary of DawgNation coming up. So, you subtract 10 from my kid's age, you subtract 10 from Jeff's kid's age, the rest of us here around, DawgNation, these kids have just sort of grown up in this DawgNation era here. That's been, really something to see. So, for all of you kind of going through a high school graduation time, we certainly hope you enjoy it and hope it's a great experience for you. I know that it will be. Obviously, a very special time in everyone's life. Let's also get ready to go cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean here right now. And I have not done this in a few days. I want to remind you that when it comes to Royal Caribbean and DawgNation, we are also on sale right now. Your opportunity to be on our 2026 DawgNation cruise. We had the thrill of a lifetime while we were on board Utopia of the Seas to be able to announce our next DawgNation cruise while we were on board. The response immediately was hot. People are jumping all over it. Obviously, we're a year away, so I don't tell you about that every single day. But I do want to remind you that if you want the best that Royal Caribbean has to offer, we think an awesome sailing experience is on board Utopia of the Seas. That's where we're going to be again for our DawgNation cruise here in 2026. And the good news is we're still going to Perfect Day Coco Cay the way we always do. But for that stop in Nassau, By the time we get there next April, that means the Royal Beach Club is also going to be up and running as well. So you'll have a chance to be among, not quite the first, but kind of, while it's still really new and fresh, to be a part of the Royal Beach Club there in Nassau. So it's April 20th through the 24th, back on board Utopia of the Seas. Jessica Slater, a great travel agent, she'll tell you all about it. You can give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can email her, jslater@dreamvacations.com. Now, if you're like me, you don't want to wait till next April to be on Royal Beach Club in Nassau or be on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. You don't want to wait for that. But next April is a time you need to have on your calendar, because that is the 2026 DawgNation cruise. We can't wait for that. All right, let's bounce through a couple of cruising around the SEC stories, courtesy of our friends at Royal Caribbean. Let me begin here with a big change to the college football playoff. As expected, we did preview this a little bit yesterday with Terrence Edwards. They are moving to what they call a straight seeding model. A year ago, you had the 12 teams that made the playoff, but the 4 highest rated conference champions got the 4 top seeds. Those were byes. Those were the neutral site games and the major bowls. This year, it's just going to be the 4 highest seeded teams. 2 quick thoughts from me on this. Thing number 1, I think this will help college football a little bit, because about the only thing that I see that stands as an impediment to the popularity of sports on television is anything that increases confusion. Sports fans don't like to be confused. The public at large doesn't really like to be confused. They like to know what's what. And as someone who did enjoy doing those weekly recaps of the college football playoff rankings, we'd go live on video and reacting to the rankings, and they would come out. Last year, that conversation was confusing. So-and-so is ranked 9th, but they're seeded 4th. That got to be a really confusing thing. I think confusion is an impediment to popularity. So this year, if you're ranked 3rd, you're the 3rd seed. And I just think that'll be better overall for fans to understand. I will say that for, what's been said, well, if this was true for Georgia, all of a sudden instead of playing Notre Dame, now you're playing, say, the winner of Tennessee and SMU. Theoretically, it's kind of an easier path, at least on paper. I think it's important to know, we just got to be honest here when we can, playing Notre Dame last year for Georgia was supposed to be an easy path. No Georgia fan thought Notre Dame had a chance to beat UGA going into that game. So it's a small point, but let's not fall prey to revisionist history of somehow Georgia had some arduous path through the college football playoff. On paper, before it began, even with an injured starting quarterback, most Georgia fans weren't necessarily saying that. Let me also mention, we've talked a lot about Tennessee as of late. There's been we had fun the other day with, could Tennessee be kicked out of the SEC because of their state NIL laws that basically kind of try to circumvent the ramifications of the House versus NCAA settlement. I said something, I can't remember if I said this on our R.S. Andrews cool down or actually during the show. I said something the other day that I believe is going to turn out to be wrong. What I said is that privately, most institutions support other institutions, and that the institution that is Tennessee Athletics will probably eventually align itself with the other SEC institutions. Now, I'm not quite so sure how true that is. I have, watched how this has sort of played out in the last few days. Maybe Tennessee really does want to go rogue here. And this is more than just a handful of sort of crazy politicians, and not crazy, but eccentric, politicians, more than just aggressive boosters. Maybe Tennessee itself is sort of okay being kind of on an island apart from the other SEC programs by itself. I saw where their athletic director, Danny White, was doing kind of an in-house video with the Tennessee chancellor. And White on video said that he believes the only solution that exists for the current problems plaguing college athletics is collective bargaining, essentially making the athletes unionized. And that's a pretty prevalent point of view. You hear that a lot in media and sort of, high-minded legal circles, things like that. Those who are very interested in sort of labor law, for instance, they'll say that kind of thing all the time. You don't hear a lot of people within college athletics saying that quite as much. That's not the institutional point of view of very many athletic departments, I don't think. So to hear White say that, even if it's kind of an in-house, non-media type interview, maybe it is proof that Tennessee is a little bit on its own apart from the others in the SEC. And while I don't think the Vols are going to truly be kicked out of the SEC because of their willingness to be aggressive with state laws and things like that related to NIL, something could get a little interesting here about the difference in opinions between this program and the others in the conference. Maybe worth considering. I'll also briefly mention this, and I do mean briefly. So the presidential commission that Nick Saban was supposed to be on with the president and the famous Cody Campbell, the famous booster from Texas Tech, that has now been put on hold. Now, I am still of the belief that there could, and I know that most people don't think this, and oftentimes when you're by yourself, you're wrong, and maybe I'm wrong here too. I do continue to believe there could be a little bit of some sort of legislative remedy from Washington, D.C. for college athletics, and just because this presidential commission is going away, or at least been put on hold, which essentially means it's going to go away, that doesn't really change that for me. This has never been about just one politician, and we don't talk about politics, but this has never been about just one politician. This has been about the fact that of all the sort of pillars of leadership, the one that would be most likely to listen to common people, sort of folk wisdom, would be the politicians, because at least theoretically they are beholden to the public in a way that university presidents and athletic directors and things like that kind of aren't. So I still believe in the possibility of a legislative remedy for the college sports problems. I don't think the presidential commission going away necessarily changes that. But even with that said, it's still a little bit of a long shot, because the fact that the moment that Saban's name came up as being on this commission, I mean, he started like talking down on it and downplaying it and distancing himself from it almost right away. I just think that these coaches and college sports figures who are kind of popular with everybody, I think they get really nervous about attaching themselves to any politician from either party, because automatically you're now unpopular with half the people the moment you do that. Obviously, a very divided country when it comes to political opinions. And so I just think that people in college sports are really allergic to the political involvement because of how unpopular most politicians are to about half their constituents. So I don't know what you do about that, but I still think the Washington, D.C. remedy may be the best hope college athletics has. We shall see, and we'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Now, on Fridays on our show, one of the things we love to do is our long drink, long finish. It's just a chance to sort of celebrate our friends at the Finish long drink. And on a 3-day weekend, you better believe the long drink's going to be flowing. But it's also a chance to kind of have some fun. Now, we're super late here right now, so we can't be, unfortunately, crazy long with this. But I do want to bring in our two producers today, great folks, Cody Chaffins, Kaylee Manziel. You know them both very well. They're also, younger and cooler than me. And I want to talk to them about something that's gotten some attention here the last 24 hours or so. Perhaps you're aware the spring UGA athletic boards meetings have been taking place there at our Reynolds Plantation on the banks of gorgeous Lake Oconee. And UGA athletic director Josh Brooks there, speaking to reporters, has talked about the idea. We've seen this. Lane Stadium the other day hosted Metallica. That's a perfect fit for them. Obviously, that's where, Enter Sandman kind of comes from. We've seen more stadiums hosting concerts as of late. And Josh Brooks, the UGA athletic director, says, we want to see Georgia do this again, too. There's been a concert at Sanford Stadium before. He wants to see it again. He says his dream is the Athens band REM. I don't think they're really touring right now, I don't think. So according to Brooks, REM says they won't do it. Mike Mills is the bass player, big sports fan. He says they won't do it, but that's still his dream. I want to bring in Cody and Kaylee on this just for a second as part of our long drink, long finish. First of all, I'm assuming that y'all agree that this is sort of a no-brainer thing to do, that we should have concerts at Sanford Stadium. That great way to make money. I think it's fun for fans. I think, the idea of this gorgeous venue being a place for concerts, I mean, this is one of those things that just sort of has to happen, right?
Yeah, I think it's a benefit for everyone involved. I mean, you're not really using it anyway for anything apart from graduation. So if you can find a way to get some sort of money out of that, I mean, I don't think that anybody is hurt in this case.
No, and I was there for the Jason Aldean concert. What was it, 2013?
Did you go to that? I didn't go to that.
There.
I didn't see. Like, I'm into country music now, really big. I would say in 2013, I kind of wasn't. So I was not super into that then. How was the concert at Sanford Stadium?
It was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
They had kind of the back half towards the bridge closed off, but they had fireworks going off throughout the night. I think what was special about having Jason Aldean there at the time, and I think it's a consideration moving forward, at least early on, is he had such an appreciation for him being able to do this, right? Like, that's the one thing that you want the artist to appreciate, that this is special. With it, Sanford Stadium doesn't do this a lot. You're going to treat it with the respect it deserves.
No, I think that's exactly right. And Kaylee, I know you go to a lot of concerts. So here's what I've sort of noticed. If you want to go back a few years ago, like I used to like to go to concerts years ago, don't get a chance to go as many now. I feel like there was a time in which stadium acts were pretty rare. Like, you didn't have a lot of musicians that sort of rose to the level of being a true stadium act. They could play like State Farm Arena. You might get 18,000, but the idea that you're going to get 40 or 50,000, which is what you'd have to require to kind of, command a stadium, there just weren't that many stadium acts. I sort of feel like now, I don't know if they're just sort of shoehorning people into these things. I just feel like there are a lot more stadium shows than there used to be of all genres, country, a little bit left of rock, pop. I just feel like there are more stadium shows than there used to be. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, no, I think that Truist Park is a really great example of that. I actually saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers there 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought it was very fitting of their kind of vibe, especially when the weather's great. I feel like certain types of bands want to take advantage of that, because I don't think that State Farm is a big enough venue to host Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I also don't think they're necessarily selling out Mercedes-Benz. So I think that a stadium tour and the amount of seats that it has kind of fits those bands that are too big for State Farm, but maybe not big enough for Mercedes.
All right, so Cody, I'll start with you here then. So, and everybody's got their opinion on this. So if Georgia's going to get into the stadium concert game, who do you think the next act, or kind of sort of the new era first act, like, who do you think the concert should be? Because by the way, we should also point out, was it Aldean and Luke Bryan that played there together in 2013?
So Luke Bryan did not play, but it was Aldean. Thomas Rhett played that day, and it was Thomas Rhett before any of us knew who Thomas Rhett was.
Yeah.
And then Jake Owen also played that day.
So we should also point out we had Ludacris here in 2016 for the G-Day debacle, which was certainly very interesting. So do you have an opinion on who, like, new era concert at Sanford Stadium, who, like, the first up should be?
So for me, it would be country again. I do think you'll get folks from all around the state kind of pilgrimaging to Athens. But I talked about off the top that it needs to be important to them to play in there. So there's so many country artists right now with UGA ties. So I went through and put a whole lineup for you.
Oh,
if you
wow.
want to start.
Wow. By all means.
We can headline, kind of co-headline Thomas Rhett and Luke Bryan. I think Thomas Rhett now would be a cool thing, but he's such a big Dog fan, as is Luke Bryan. I think the next one would be Megan Maroney, who's really hot right now. She's on tour with Kenny Chesney. She's almost at headliner status. Obviously a big Dog fan as well. And then I'll give you a couple kind of opening acts that would be a lot of fun. Lily Rose is a country artist, has played at the Grand Ole Opry. She is Hondo's daughter.
Is that right?
On the Georgia radio broadcast, so it would be really cool for her. I saw her in concert in Orange Beach a couple of years ago. I guess Gulf Shores is technically where that venue was. And then the Castellos is a trio of 3 sisters, one of which just graduated from UGA, who are kind of up and coming there, kind of hot right now. So there's you 3, or what was that? 1, 2, 3, 5 acts there for you. So I think a whole day of country concerts would be an
so you're basically like turning it into like Stagecoach Festival or something like that.
I think it could be a whole lot of fun, and I think all of those people, again, have ties to UGA, would appreciate the fact they're getting places.
I love it all. We're going to call it Hedges Fest. That's what we're going to call it, Hedges Fest, and that's what we're going to do. Kaylee, I'm guessing you've got some different genres of music you'd like to do.
I mean, I like the idea of doing a sort of festival type vibe in Sanford Stadium. That way, maybe if you don't like this one artist, you're going to like somebody that's out there. I think in our picks that'll come out on DawgNation later. I had said the Eagles just because I'm dying to see them, and I don't know if they're ever going to leave the Sphere, so that's like my dream manifestation artist to play in there. But maybe somebody more realistic. I think Connor put this in an article on DawgNation.com. Somebody that it would mean something to is like what we would call Quavo and Friends, because now a lot of these rap artists, they don't just do a concert with themselves. They'll do their whatever and their friends. And so I think it would mean a lot to Quavo, and we get to see some cool Atlanta artists, or maybe somebody like Outkast, somebody that has got local ties.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. If you want to do the Lane Stadium version where they had Metallica, like, I'm sorry for not knowing this, is the Who, are they still out there to kind of come do Baba O'Reilly?
Some of them are. I think there's enough of them you could have them come do that. That would be awesome.
There's enough of them.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm not quite so sure how many original members we still kind of have out there and plying their trade, but that would be certainly an example of that. Well, listen, I think it's fun. Obviously, you guys have some great ideas there on that. I like the idea, whether we're going to go hip-hop genre or country genre, I like the idea we're going to turn this into a festival. This is going to be like Bonnaroo in Athens right here, right? Which is
minus the camping.
Yeah, exactly.
But plenty of tailgating.
I like that. Great stuff there from both Cody and Kaylee. That is our long drink, long finish. And by the way, today it is a long finish. I told them before the show began today, it's Friday before Memorial Day. We're going to be quick. We're going to get out of here. Well, guess what? We're an hour and 20 in and we're still on the air. So mission not accomplished on that front. But as you're getting ready to enjoy a great weekend, the long drink, a great thing to take with you. You're playing golf, you're fishing, you're hanging out at the pool. Cooler full of finished long drink, great way to do that. The traditional citrus, the blue can, the grapefruit flavor. That's Kaylee's favorite version. It's mine too. My wife likes the long drink cranberry, long drink peach. A lot of folks like that long drink pineapple that's out there now. So many awesome opportunities there. So check them out all online, thelongdrink.com. Learn the story, kind of how it got to America, got here to us on DawgNation, all across the great state of Georgia now. Great part of a great holiday weekend. Make sure you enjoy yourself some Finnish long drink today. And as we get ready to wrap things up, Golden Shoe-wise, he's talked to Jeff Sentell a good bit before about five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson and the work that George is doing. Roquan Smith, Jalen Walker, all pretty heavy factors into his recruitment. Well, that's not the only linebacker kind of making a push for Atkinson right now. This was fun. So on our Instagram post, we shared the video of Jeff interviewing Tyler Atkinson. If you're not following DawgNation on Instagram, you certainly should. Well, someone who is following, apparently, DawgNation on Instagram is C.J. Allen, who may be the next of those Georgia's Butkus Award winners at linebacker. Allen putting out to Tyler Atkinson on our Instagram page, the move, he calls him little bro, encouraging Tyler Atkinson to come to Georgia. So we'll give C.J. Allen a golden shoe for using our Instagram page as a way of helping recruit Tyler Atkinson. That's fun to see. Lousy, stinking Gators, they got no fun in their lives right now. It's been 1,658 days since they have beaten the Georgia Bulldogs. That is our Gator Hater Updater. We hope you all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We certainly appreciate those who are related to and family of throughout America's history, those who paid the ultimate price for us to enjoy what we enjoy. The story of America's freedom is an awesome one, and it was paved by those who've served in our armed forces and in some cases paid the ultimate price. So our hearts will be certainly full as we think about that. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. We'll see you back here on Tuesday for DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to talking to you then. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. You can trust them on all of that. We'll get ready to take some of your comments here and find out how you are doing. Long show today, not planned that way, but some days it just turns out to be that way. By the way, Georgia softball taking place right now. ABC Chiropractic reporting tough game for our girls in Florida. 3-run home run there, kind of right there, I guess off the top. Game started at 11, just got going. So already facing a deficit there on that. Let us see what else. Somebody also mentioned Corey Smith, longtime performer, got a big tie to Georgia, famous song that people have liked throughout the years. That is the case. Jonathan Aaron says we're going to go to noon. Well, that's not what I told our people we were doing, but it is certainly going here for a while. D. Nelly laughing about the ludicrous thing. So, you know how like sometimes on the internet you have like oral histories? Like I really feel like a fun oral history would be the 2016 G-Day game. Because I think to begin with, this is my perception of this. I think to begin with, that Georgia probably thought it needed the big concert act to get 93,000 people there, not realizing the honest truth is that the excitement was about the fact that, hey, it's a new era for Georgia football. Kirby Smart's asked for this. We want to do it. That I do, as someone who was kind of around at the time, get the sense that Georgia could have pulled 93K just on its own. They didn't really need Ludacris. No disrespect to Ludacris, but they didn't really need him for the 93K day that day. But since they'd promised the concert, well, now they want to get one, and you had a chance to get a hugely popular act like that. So he comes out and plays at halftime, did all the hits. I mean, like even songs that I don't know hardly anything about hip-hop music, but I knew every song he played that day just because, you know, famous act, big songs, things like that. And then you kind of find out about like what they call the concert rider that famous acts typically have. Kind of get a little strange there. Going back and sort of retelling the story of the 2016 G-Day game and the challenge of 93K Day, and the fact that I think that kind of turned into a little bit of a thing. Jeremy Hartman says, love Outkast. Went to see them in 2015 when they did their 25th anniversary tour. So like I said, I don't know anything about hip hop. I do know they're going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they are not currently working together. Is that correct? Big Boy and Andre, I believe. They are not currently. Yeah, I'm being told that is correct. Yes, you all heard that, I believe. They are not currently working together. Now, do we know, is this a thing where they just, are going their own way creatively, or do they not like each other? Do we know that?
Sorry. I believe it's not personal. I think they just Andre's off playing the flute somewhere.
I did hear that. He did a concert at the Fox of the day just playing the flute. Is that right? That's a bold choice if that is indeed the case. So maybe you could bring them back together for this. Now, so like this is not unrealistic, I would say. They are, like I said, hip hop is not really my genre, so I'm going to obviously embarrass myself with how little I know. But I do believe they are big enough that they could play a stadium show, especially if it's a stadium reunion, on the event of going back in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Most Hall of Fame acts use that as a springboard to kind of get back in the public conscious again and go on tour or something like that. So could you do, now you might say, well, they're more connected to Atlanta than Athens, so therefore it may not make a lot of sense for them. Maybe it doesn't. But that's not I don't think it's unrealistic necessarily. It doesn't move me the same way the genres I'm more interested in do, but I would say that that's big enough for a stadium, somewhat realistic in the fact that you got to assume they're going to be pushed to reunite here, assuming they don't dislike each other. Foster Moss says they've been separated for more than 10 plus years. Thomas Morgan, by the way, also joining us for Alaska. He's right. Royal Caribbean does go on Alaskan cruises. And Thomas, one of these days, I hope to get a chance to go on an Alaskan cruise. I've never been to Alaska. I'd love to see it. I think a Royal Caribbean cruise would be a great way to do that. So, Thomas, we're really glad you're checking in. And it's fun to have you joining us. And it's obviously one of the most beautiful places you could ever go to. I'd love to be there here at some point in time. Be there, I should say, at some point in time. Hugh Nash is checking in, says it's been a while. He said a tough year. Well, Hugh, I am very sorry to hear that, but I am very glad you're here with us today. Always happy to have you share time with us through good times and hard times. But thank you, Hugh, for being with us here today. I'm really glad you're here. Thank you. Jeremy Harbin says Outkast has a partnership with the Falcons. They just brought their clothing line back. So bringing back a clothing line, which I didn't know about, that's typically a precursor to some sort of get-together. So Jeremy Harbin says they also got together for a 20th anniversary or so, and this will be the 30th anniversary. So a lot of that starts to make sense. Wyatt Fielding mentions, you got a lot of these country acts especially that are pretty big fans of other teams. Morgan Wallen, for instance, big Tennessee guy. Years ago, Kenny Chesney, big Tennessee guy. Saw Riley Green in Athens the other night. He's a big Alabama guy. And, so that's an interesting dynamic of, if you're going to really be in the stadium concert game, not every act that plays there necessarily going to have a personal tie to you. Someone like Morgan Wallen, who's clearly big enough to play in stadiums, conceivably the sort of act that you could get. But boy, that's about as much of a Tennessee fan as it gets right there. That's a challenge. There'd be plenty of Georgians who'd love to see Morgan Wallen, but you're giving a big platform to a big Tennessee fan if you do that. Whitefield and mentioning Jim Irsay. Yeah, we talked about Irsay a little earlier this week. Very, very sad. Gone. He's much younger than I realized. Some of that, unfortunately, was hard living, but much younger than I realized. Jonathan Aaron also asking who Ric Flair's team is going to be this year. Yeah, I haven't heard who the new team he's gravitating towards is yet. I have not heard that. DT says best stadium band I've seen them 4 times is Metallica. They're actually great musicians. So, like I said, when I was younger, I used to go to concerts all the time. When we went to the Riley Green concert the other night, our friends from Sherbert Pro invited us. That was first concert I'd been to in forever, since before my daughter was born, probably. I'm talking about real concert. But we used to go to concerts all the time. I saw Metallica a couple of times. Saw them at what used to be the old Lakewood Amphitheater. They were great there. Saw them at Georgia Dome. A lot of y'all remember this, one of those like festival type shows where like they came out and James, is it Hetfield? Is that how you say his last name? James Hetfield. I guess he was like injured or something. And so he couldn't perform. At least that's what he said. And so they basically did not do a full concert. Came out like Kid Rock was with him. And so Kid Rock came out and sang with Metallica some. They just sort of messed around. And then gave everybody vouchers for free tickets. That was like a paper. You had to hold on to your paper ticket for however many months, and they came back and played again. And so I saw that too. So some of y'all will remember that. I was there for that. Bill Camacho, big classic rock fan. DT was also at that show too. He says the Korn lead singer pitched in. Yeah, I guess he did something. I didn't know Korn quite as well, but yeah, they were also there. I do remember that. Savannah Bryan pointing out last year the Braves had an Outcast bobblehead. They indeed have that. Rambo said the best concert I ever saw was Billy Joel at the Omni in 1984. I saw Billy Joel in concert a few times too. I've run the gamut from Metallica to Billy Joel, almost everything in between. Garrison Tucker says, if you listen to Sturgill Simpson, I have listened to some of that. I'm sort of out of my, to be completely honest, and this is not in any way disrespect, because obviously very, very talented. I'm sort of out of my hipster phase when it comes to music. Don't listen to Sturgill Simpson much anymore. Don't listen to, who's, I'm blanking on his name, the guy that, some of the sort of the more hipster style stuff. I don't listen to as much of that anymore. I don't know why necessarily, but one day I just decided I was allergic to that and stopped listening to it. And so now pretty much the only thing I listen to is like, basically like more mainstream type stuff, but I've been to as many like hipster music shows as almost anybody. But one of these days I just decided not anymore. Which is a weird thing, but I did do that. Senior Dog 54 said he saw the Eagles for $5 right after Desperado came out. That's really awesome. So luckily, now it wasn't like during their, sort of contemporary age, but back when Glenn Frey was still alive, I'm talking about this going back 20 years ago. I saw the Eagles a couple of times, 3 times maybe, on a tour they were doing around that time. And it was really fun. They were really good. I'm always amazed by these bands that have these like long, deep catalogs where like everything is a song that everybody knows. They were great. And Glenn Frey was still a really good singer. Let's see what else. Let me go to Facebook here for a moment. Then after that, we really are going to wrap up. I have respect for those who keep us going. All right, on Facebook. How about this? Morris Rich, our buddy Orlando Dog, says, this is a wild show. He saw the Eagles in the 70s and Jimmy Buffett open for them. Like, how much fun is that? That's such a cool thing. Such a cool thing. To think about those two iconic, acts basically on the same thing together. For some reason, my Facebook's not cooperating today. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, yeah, so the old Metallica show that I mentioned, I guess James Hetfield had a jet ski incident. He said he couldn't perform or walk. It was on Lake Lanier. So I guess even back then, Lake Lanier was still claiming folks. Let me go back to YouTube. I'm trying to get Facebook to load here for a second. Johnny Surf Dog says he sold Axl Rose a $400 bottle of rum in Puerto Rico. That's really fun. So I would say that if you had asked me to make a list of concerts that I never saw that I would like to have seen, Guns N' Roses, and I know a lot of their concerts do not always go well, but Guns N' Roses would definitely be that for me. I did see years ago when all these names are disappearing from me. When like Slash and them were in that band with the lead singer from Stone Temple Pilots, I actually, believe it or not, I actually saw them in concert twice, maybe. No, maybe it's just once. Oh wow, that's awesome. How was that, Kaylee? But did you see Guns N' Roses with like Slash and Axl and all that together? Oh wow, how about that's awesome. Yes, that's I would have loved to have seen that, did not. I did see Slash and some of the Guns members with the former lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots, who I believe is no longer with us, for sure. How about this? Hugh Nash says he saw AC/DC Wednesday at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. I have no idea why my Facebook is not working. AC/DC Wednesday in Nashville. That'd be awesome. And that's another one of those stadium shows now. I'm telling you, there's a lot of these like stadium shows here right now. AC/DC, another band that I have not seen that I'd like to have seen. That'd be a fun one for Sanford Stadium, kind of stadium rock type stuff. He says they were as good as ever. That's awesome. That's good music to listen to while you're like, in the gym or something like that. That's really good. Well, Facebook, I have no idea what's going on, but I can't get to you right now for some reason. I apologize for that. Let us see what else. Bill Camacho says he's going out of town. Bill, safe travels to you. Senior Dog 54 says somebody supposedly caught the Eagles playing recorded music at a concert recently. Well, the truth is, if we're being completely honest, almost every band uses a little bit of a backup track. It's just true. Now, they still play, but they are playing with aid of a backup track. Some of y'all know way more about music than I do, but my knowledge of music leads me to believe that almost everybody's using a support track. They're still singing, they're still playing, but the real beefy sound that you get from a little bit of support. If somebody tells me I'm wrong about that, I'll certainly trust somebody else who knows more, but I'm fairly certain that sort of supporting backup tracks are pretty common even for rock bands. Savannah Bryan says he saw the Stones last year at Mercedes-Benz. He says their tour was sponsored by ARP. So they're in their 80s, I think. I want to say Rod Stewart is still performing, maybe in Vegas, maybe. He's 80. You got a lot of people out there that are literally in their 80s still performing. I heard that Stones tour was amazing. I heard it was really good. Senior Talk 54 says Led Zeppelin didn't need a backup track when I saw him in 1973. So there you go there on that. That's good. Oh, by the way, Garrison Tucker says he saw the Doors at the Hollywood Bowl in 1968. What an amazing story that is. Boy, you must have some stories to tell from that. How about this? Savannah Bryan says he saw the Eagles play the first show in a new arena in Savannah. He says they had a choir sing several songs with them. That must have been beautiful. That must have been really beautiful. Cody here on DawgNation.com says, my dad, sister, and I saw Motley Crue, Poison, Joan Jett, and Def Leppard a couple years ago in North Carolina. That'd be really fun. That would be really fun. Really good stuff. Let me go back to YouTube here for a moment. Wyatt Fielding says he worked the Riley Green show. He said you'd be amazed at what went on behind the scenes and how they do it. Yeah, those concerts are big undertakings. For sure. Big undertakings. Wyatt says they were a really good band, but the way they do rehearsals and set up everything is amazing, and how they, set it up and everything. Yeah, I mean, like it's pretty wild, for the sound check and things like that. Alex Mitchum said a friend of his went on a Kiss cruise, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. So there you go. Those, I don't know how many of these Royal Caribbean does, but like the musical cruises, not the Broadway musical, but like, like rock band themed cruises are really popular, really popular. All right, let's see what else. We're going to get ready to go here in a minute. I'm going to try Facebook one more time. I don't know why it won't load for me here right now. Yeah, something's going on my Facebook. All right, we're going to get ready to go for right now, though. Thank you all for a great week. I hope you're all getting ready for a great Memorial Day weekend. As I said before, it's a day that sort of serves two purposes. There's a very serious, obviously, need to reflect back on the ultimate price that was paid by so many people to allow America to remain a country that so many of us love. And that's a very serious part of it. And in the midst of that, it's also a time in which people begin their summer and they cook out with family and friends. They're finding some time to be outside, going to the pool, many folks traveling. And I like both parts of it. I really do. See the need for both parts of it. So whatever your Memorial Day weekend has in store for you, hope you enjoy it. Check out RS Andrews online if you're worried about the AC unit kind of keeping you cool through the weekend that's still on its way. You can find them online, rsandrews.com. They'll keep you cool and comfortable. They'll get your air conditioning tuned back up to factory fresh specs. rsandrews.com for more on that. We'll see you back here Tuesday. DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.